Today, we are going to make some grass. No, I'm not in Colorado, so it's not going to be that kind of grass. It's our techniques that are so simple and sensible, your models will practically build themselves.
Well, now that we have some rocks made, let's get them painted up, shall we? We are going to use just these pigments here. You can use wood and Scenics, but this is what we're going to use. And you could use a little cup. You do need a spongy brush to do it, but we're actually just going to do it right on the
Scenics makes some great pigments, but I have the pigments that I showed you, and I'm going to start out with the yellow oxide, and I'm going to mix up. I'm just going to do it right here. I'm going to take a little bit and put on here. And then I'm going to start doing what's called the leopard spotting technique. And I'm just going to kind of go around and if I get it a little bit too pigmenty, I can add a little bit of water. And I'm just going to put it in random spots around the rock. Now, some folks will tell you that you can or should, if you're not using the Woodland Scenics, that you should use a little bit of, say, water and dish soap or alcohol to pre-treat your rock beforehand. So let's stop and do that. We're going to do that on this one right here. And it makes it easier to move the pigments around. So let's show you how that works. I've done it both ways. I do like having it pre-treated, honestly, if I don't use the Woodland Scenics. To kind of get the idea how this leopard spotting technique works. So I'm going to go ahead and do some more of this off camera. And just to show you a little contrast here, I do have this Naples yellow, and if I were to start with this Naples yellow, which isn't a bad color to start with, it's a little yellowy, for lack of a better term. And I've used this on some of my rocks. There's also a raw sienna that I could use, which is kind of a yellowish brown color, and use this as my my base. I want to cover maybe 50% of the rock with my base color, by the way. This leopard spotting technique. Again, if it's too wet, I just add a little more pigment. Okay, so there is the raw sienna. You can see that. Here is the yellow ochre, and here is the Naples yellow. So that gives you some idea of what I have available to use for my base coat. It kind of depends on the type of rock you're doing. For most of what I do with Utah rock, the raw sienna works very, very well. But if I mix some of that with the Naples yellow, you see it actually looks pretty good, I think, as my second color. Okay, now we're going to throw some brown ochre into the mix. It's a nice brown dirt color, for lack of a better term. And see, I'm putting some here on my my big rock face. See how I got this whole rock face out? I was actually pretty proud of that, because the first few times I could never get a full piece out. Once I started experimenting using alcohol or water and dish soap, or wet water as I call it, that's when I started to figure out that, oh yeah, this works very well in being able to get some of these larger rocks out. So that's where I found out that the alcohol really worked best. So yeah, whole flipping rock face, yay! And these work really good for certain things. I know it doesn't look like much right now, but trust me. Here's a color, since we are doing Utah scenes. It's called Mars Brown, and it's kind of a reddish brown. I don't use a lot of this, but I have been known to use some of it. So gives us a bit of that red rock color. It's okay if I get it on where I've already got some other pigment, that's fine. Although I'm trying to get it in some of these white areas. And I like to use the sponge brush for this. You can use other types of makeup brushes, or you could use even just a regular brush. I've done it that way as well. And this gives us a little bit of red in there. Okay, this one is called Mars Red, and it is really red. So if I ever do use this, it's very sparingly, but because I don't want to look like frickin' Mars. But throw a couple of little spots on here so you can get an idea of what it looks like. Man, that's fine. It's fine if it runs, don't worry. Okay. Yeah, we're good. Now, if I want more yellow on some of these rocks, I can go back with one of the yellow colors, and that's not a problem at all. Let's get a little bit of red in here, just a little bit. And finally, we're going to use some of the burnt umber, and it's kind of a brown, dark brown red. Nice dark color. And this one I'm going to thin out a little bit more, and I'm going to put it in more places. So I want to use this as kind of a partial wash. Get down in some of these cracks and crevices. Okay, that's looking pretty good. This one here. And you see that since this is a little bit wetter, some of these areas that maybe I have a little bit too much of one color or another, I can actually move that pigment around a little bit. And finally, we're going to use some of the burnt umber, and it's kind of a brown, dark brown red. Nice dark color. And this one I'm going to thin out a little bit more, and I'm going to put it in more places. So I want to use this as kind of a partial wash. Get down in some of these cracks and crevices. Okay, that's looking pretty good. There you go. And that's how that one's looking. Let's move to our rock face real quick. Again, someday I will try the grays when I model a different part of the country. There is some gray in Utah. Utah is awesome. The scenery's got all sorts of different colors in it, and even in the same region, you can find the same or different variations of color from gray to red. It's a very, very beautiful and colorful state. If you've never been out here, yeah, definitely look at some of the pictures online. You'll see the amazing scenery that we have. So here is our rock formation, our rock face. It actually had a lot of air bubbles in it, I see. But it's come along pretty good. Okay, we'll see how that looks when it dries. Okay, so here, now we are going to do the final step, which is adding some of Larry's bathwater. Now this is really where I'm going to get some of the grays that we've talked about. You still need a little bit of gray. But I really want this to get down into some of the cracks and crevices. So, I'll give it a shot with my alcohol again. And try that, and let's see how that works. So, here's my Larry's bathwater. And if you don't know what Larry's bathwater is, check out my video on making a pin wash. It's called Larry's bathwater. So, you see, it's turned some of those to gray, and it gets into some of the cracks and crevices. So here we are with this big rock face, and we're going to try and get it to go down these cracks as best as possible. So I just want to accentuate those areas. I'm not trying to change a lot of color on this. But I really want to try and accentuate the cracks and the individual rocks. So we'll see how that goes. And it is going to give me some color variations. I am going to get a little bit of gray in here as well, which I don't think is going to hurt anything. Definitely with all these air bubbles I have, it's going to help with those. So. I'm going to try and make sure I get anything that's white now touched up.
So here's how they turned out after they dried, and I really like the way that that these look. So now we're going to need to anchor it to the rest of the scenery. So we're going to mix up some of our plaster of Paris, and we're just going to goop some on the back of our plaster rock. We can also put some on the base that we're going to anchor to. But you can see it's about the consistency of toothpaste when I put it on here. Anyway, so here's the area we're going to anchor it to. And I can put some there. And we're going to just put that right in place. And, well, it actually works pretty good. After a minute or so, it's hard and in place, and it's there permanently. So you can see here it is in place, and there's also a little gap where this rock on the top I've put on, so we got to fill that as well.
Filled in some of these
and
areas,
here it is on our summer board, ready
plaster,
to go.
And it
I
worked
think
out
it turned
great.
out pretty darn good.
So there you go.
Here on the board on our tunnel, you can see some of the area that is kind of gray because of that wash.